and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your coming soon to a system near you host, Madelyn.
I'm your not representative of actual host, Emma.
And thanks for tuning in to this week's show. This week it's a side quest, and it's Emma's turn to pick what games-related topic we're going to be talking about on the episode. So Emma, what's up? What are we chatting about?
This week, we are chatting about game trailers. Woo!
This is the moment. Earlier today, I was talking about this with Clickbait Boyfriend, and he did like his impression of a video game trailer. And I wish I had recorded it, so I could have like cut it in here. He was like, like, in a world where you're under attack, new characters to play as, new weapons. Check out the gameplay.
Like the inner world is such like a classic like thing, but when was the era that they actually did that? Because they do not use that anymore.
No, it was like I don't even know if it was ever actually a thing. So Emma, what could possibly have inspired a game trailers episode?
Well, it wasn't this past week, it was 2 weeks ago that we had the direct state of play day.
Was that really
right?
2 weeks ago? That's unbelievable. No, it was last week. By the time this podcast airs, it will have been almost 2 weeks. But it's,
yes. Yeah. You mean when we're doing this live at noon on Sunday?
Correct. I meant by the time this airs, as in my brain is still, like, in July somewhere.
Okay. But yeah, so we had that big day where we had, like, a big Nintendo Direct and a little state of play.
Baby state of play.
That was full of trailers. It was state of play is never long.
Did we already know when God of War was coming out, or was that new information?
We already knew when it was coming out. I didn't think they'd shown very much of Ragnarok at all until that trailer. So I was like, oh, okay, finally, here's some footage. So
finally, some good food.
Like, I didn't think they had released a trailer since, like, early this year or something like that. Sure. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I haven't been following that closely. But it's pretty normal-sized state of play and a hunky, like, one of their, like, 40-minute Nintendo Directs. All in one day. So there's a ton of game trailers. So I was thinking about that. And then I also started watching Cyberpunk Edgerunners on Netflix, which is the 10-episode Cyberpunk tie-in with Cyberpunk 2077. It has been markedly successful in getting people back into that game. Which, success, I guess.
The Cyberpunk Renaissance is coming.
But yeah, 10 episode animated series from Studio Trigger. It's fine.
Is Keanu
I'm like
in
4
it?
episodes in. Keanu is not in it.
There's the point?
There is oh god, what's his name? Giancarlo?
Oh, yeah.
Espinosa? What is his name? Esposito, okay. He's in it. He has a very small role.
He loves games, huh?
I guess so, yeah. Amazing what a union dub will get you. Anyway. So I've been watching that, and it's fine. I'm enjoying it fine. But it really reminded me, back in, like, 2015, 2017, something like that.
2013, actually.
2013?
Yes.
Oh. Wow. I was reminded of the very first teaser for Cyberpunk 2077 that CD Projekt Red put out when they're still, like, working on The Witcher 3, basically. They're just, like, put out a teaser that's like, this is what's next after that. And I thought that teaser was so cool when it came out. I still think it's pretty cool. It's just like one slow-mo scene with a really cool song over it and good, like, you gotta put, like, the gunshots to the rhythm of the song, obviously. And like, I don't think the game really, I don't have much of an opinion on Cyberpunk 2077 at this point. But I do not think it really hits the vibes that first 2013 teaser had. And I still I want I want that game,
It is a really striking teaser. It's ahead of its time in the, like, maybe cops are bad kind of framing of it. Although obviously that's a big part of the cyberpunk aesthetic. And yeah, the coming when it's ready closer hits a little different after everything that happened.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, Emma already sort of recapped much of what Emma just discussed about being good about that trailer is going to be part of my taxonomy of things you need to make a successful trailer. Namely, good music, some slow-mo, some stuff to the beat. It's not super memeable, but we'll get to that. Maybe it is. You could probably do something with the shot where the cop pops in behind her, and it's like me sleeping peacefully, like my Slack notifications or something like that. I don't know.
Thanks, Valen, for that life relevant meme.
You're welcome. 2013 people would have been like, "What's Slack?" That's a little bit of real life cyberpunk for you.
Yeah, Malin, tell us about good trailers.
Yeah, should I just give my theory of a good game trailer and then we can talk about it?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, number one, the most important thing that I learned watching a lot of game trailers for this podcast and just having watched some game trailers over the course of my life is it's got to have a good song.
Yeah.
Non-negotiable, 100%, pretty much impossible to make a good, memorable trailer unless you have a good song. At certain points of time, that song has to be a sort of specific mood or specific genre, and we'll talk about that, because the PlayStation 3 era has a real distinct musical aesthetic to all of its iconic trailers that I think is hilarious. But it's gotta have a good song, right?
At least a memorable song. I think that a sort of funny song can also be memorable.
Sorry, yes. I mean good in the sense of evoking something in the listener.
Yeah.
Like you're absolutely, I don't know. Would you consider the Bug Snacks song to be objectively a good song?
I don't know.
That's fair.
Go back and forth.
Yeah. Number two, you've got to decide if you're doing a movie trailer or if you're just vibing. There can be some overlap between the two. Like, in some ways, I do think that Cyberpunk 2077 trailer is kind of both.
Yeah.
It's more on the just vibing side than the movie trailer side, but because it's in that sort of that realistic aesthetic, it ticks some of the movie trailer boxes. But you've got to decide if what you're doing is, this is the trailer for the narrative of my game with striking cinematics, and it's a movie. Or you've got to decide if it's just like, we're bopping along with something that's sort of relevant to the game, but I'm not setting expectations that my game is exactly like this. But it's got to match the vibe, and that's really important. I think we're going to talk about a lot of trailers today that are like, these are very cool trailers, but the vibes are wrong for the actual game. Mm-hmm. 3, some slow-mo is probably good. Very few iconic trailers that I watched that didn't feature some slow-mo. So consider some slow-mo in your trailer.
Thanks. Good.
4, there's got to be a meme these days. Whether that's like the song you use, whether that's some kind of specific shot, right? But there's got to be something like, to really catch fire these days, you've got to do something that Twitter is going to want to riff on. Maybe TikTok riffs on these things too. I'm still not hooked into that, right? So think about that.
I refuse to be hooked into TikTok. I can't do it.
Yeah, I have actively chosen to not be hooked into TikTok. I have no, like, I respect that there are, like, creators on there and that, like, it's an interesting social platform. I've just decided that, like, for my own personal mental health, it's, like, best to not start.
Yeah.
Number 5, if your things have got to, like, hit to the beat, right? you gotta hit to the beat. You can't just use a good song. You gotta have like some good hits. And I feel like I had another thing that isn't in my like written down. Oh, number 6, minimal gameplay. That's my hot take.
That's the one point where Madelyn loses all listeners. I know. Right there.
Everyone's been like, yeah, slow-mo with some good tunes and a hot meme? Absolutely. And I'm like, please don't show me your game. I truly feel like there's not a point.
Why do you think there's not a point? Even reading like your notes, I don't fully get it. I don't fully get your reasoning there.
I just feel like, to me anyway, trailers are all about vibes. They're all about hype. And I think...
Yeah, but do you think gameplay can't evoke vibes?
I think it can. I'm just thinking of like... And I think it can. I'm just not personally watching a 2-minute trailer to get much of a sense of what the gameplay is going to be in a game. And I think if you are... Look, I mean, plenty of trailers are that, right? But I just feel like these kind of like 2-minute trailer situations are not best served for giving viewers an accurate... Like, like a trailer I've watched, probably more than many other trailers are the Kingdom Hearts 3 ones. And I really like the one that's like, it's both songs. And he says, there's no saving you. And then the music kicks back in, right? Like, good stuff. Great stuff there. And there's a lot of gameplay there. And I think in a lot of ways, it makes the Disney worlds look way cooler than they actually are. Not to, like, hate on Kingdom Hearts 3 too much. But it's like, it makes it all look very epic and, like, very exciting. Anyway, my point being with this, you can definitely show off the gameplay in a hype way. But I just think that anyone who is coming to a trailer thinking it's going to give them, like, a good impression, like, an accurate impression of gameplay, there are just better ways to do that now.
I feel like you're, like, conflating a couple of things, though.
I sure am. Proud of it.
Even when it comes to, like, a vibe trailer or a movie trailer, those are twisting the game in the exact same way that a gameplay trailer is.
Absolutely. But I feel like we can all be on the same page that a vibe trailer and a movie trailer are twisting things, and that people get angry about gameplay. And I'm just like, let's all not get angry anymore. Like, let's just not do that anymore.
So it's not really a matter of whether you think it makes a good trailer. You just don't want people to get angry, so you'd rather not show them any game.
Well, I'd also like... I mean, 1, yes. 2, I'd just like to see more weird stuff happening in these. Gameplay trailers can be hype, but they're never going to be as hype as, like, the Bugsnax song. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. Yeah.
That's all I mean. I just want to see more people being like, let's do something really weird, as opposed to...
Although the Bugsnax song trailer did have gameplay.
Do you remember any of it?
Yeah, you walk around, you look at bugs.
The only thing I remember from that trailer is the song. And that's all that I need to remember from that trailer. That's all I mean.
Okay.
It's fine. There can be gameplay. I'm just like, all the anger around game trailers is about misleading gameplay stuff. And it's like, let's just not do that anymore.
Well, I don't think that's true either. I think that there's anger about misleading tone in certain trailers.
No, that is true.
Or misleading graphics, or an interpretation of misleading graphics in game trailers. I feel like not showing gameplay gets more anger sometimes than misleading gameplay.
I know. I just want...
So I feel like you're simplifying things maybe
here's what I want. My dream is that we just let the trailers be the trailers, right? They can just be commercials, right? And we can all agree that it's like, this doesn't represent exactly what the game is. It's just to get you hype about this game, hopefully in a way that is not dishonest about, like, the feeling of the game, right? Like, we'll talk about Dead Island, right? Which is a great trailer, but is definitely not honest about, like, the experience of what playing that game is. And so I just sort of feel like, let's have these, like, hype trailers, and then if those are hype, demos are becoming much more of a widespread thing. Go play your demo. Or, because it's not just we can put our trailer up at E3 and that's the only chance that we have for someone to see it, right? Put up the trailer and then put up a 30-minute gameplay demo on your YouTube, right? I don't know. I just feel like, I think ultimately what I'm trying to say is that I think that a 2-minute snippet is not a great place to be like doing a ton of advertising of the gameplay of your game, but that's where a lot of people are getting their advertising for the gameplay of the game. Does that make sense?
I guess so.
It's fine. You can tell me I'm wrong. There can be gameplay in it. I just want everyone to stop watching it with an expectation that they're going to learn anything about the real gameplay from.
I feel like your complaint here is less about the trailer part and just about video game culture, which is perfectly fair.
It is.
Right, but it's not really about trailers.
You're absolutely right. The culture around trailers is what I'm trying to get around.
Yes. I don't really want this to, we've already talked about video game marketing a little bit,
You're right.
so I don't really want this to devolve too much into all of that. But yes, there is definitely, video games are somewhat uniquely tuned into like this hype cycle that is somewhat of a toxic spiral in terms of fandom and relationship between fans and developers.
100%. Anyway, I'll roll back my 6th requirement here, except with the asterisk by it of, like, showing gameplay is the most obvious possible thing you could do in a trailer. Don't you want to subvert expectations?
I guess so. I will say, just in defense of gameplay trailers, although maybe this is a poor example to play as now that we've finished talking about gamer culture, but my favorite The Last of Us 2 trailer that came out was one that was just like 2 minutes of staged gameplay through a single scene, right? That starts out with stealth, and then that stealth is broken and turns into sort of like a frantic action scene. Which I thought was very good at displaying, like, the tone and how this game differed from the first one, for instance.
I think that's fair. I think what I'm lodging complaints about are trailers that are, like, 75% cinematic, and then they've got, like, flashes of gameplay throughout. It's like, I think that's not effective. For me. Personally.
I see.
Anyway. Forget about me whining about gameplay. Most important is a hot tune.
Yeah. I do think this is the biggest takeaway, is you have to have a really strong song.
So where shall we start? What iconic trailer do you want to discuss?
I mean, do we want to talk about specific trailers, or do we want to talk about things more generally
Let's
first?
talk about more generally first. You got all these lovely academic papers that you took great notes on.
I just Googled, like, history of video game trailers, and there was, like, a bunch of academic articles for some reason. I was very surprised that there were so many, like, academic papers on game trailers.
I guess people have to write stuff for, like, their marketing classes.
I guess so, yeah.
And they're like, I like games, let's write about games.
But sort of on your point, of, like, what makes a good trailer, is a lot of these articles were talking about how the trailer is something that is inherited from movies, right?
Yeah.
And movies making trailers, at least most movies, are taking footage from the finished film, you know? They're done with it, and then somebody cuts a trailer from the film and plays it, you know? Then it advertises the finished movie.
Yeah.
But the way games work there's a couple of problems with that, just in the difference of development. You have to start generally advertising your game before it's done, right? Because I feel like the cycle for most games is you finish it, and then, like, within a couple of months you should be releasing it. And it's hard if you're only advertising your game a month before release and you're not Nintendo. Nintendo can do this. Nobody else can.
Why do you think it is, like, a genuine question here. Why couldn't games marketing just run on a slightly different cycle, right? Like, I get, like...
Money.
I get, like, the game is fit...
Money.
But...
A lot of studios cannot start their next game until they know how much they have lost or
Okay.
made on the previous game they've made.
Okay, I guess that's true. That makes sense.
There are not a lot of studios that have like the financial capital, the stuff in savings to continue going if they like release a bomb.
That's fair.
You know, and they can't know that until it's released.
Okay.
So they can't really start full-fledged development of another game until their previous game
That's
is
a dumb
released.
thing I hadn't thought of, so that makes sense. But why can't, like, the AAA studios do it that way?
I feel like even a lot of AAA studios, that is the case.
It's bleak out there.
Yeah. Really, the only studio I know of that holds on to games for a while, or can, is Nintendo,
Right.
and the studios that work with them. Like, just for a reflection of that, like, Xenoblade 3 got announced with the Splatoon 3 release date originally, and then they were like, oops, Splatoon 3 needs more time, but Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is done, so they moved it up to the previous Splatoon 3 release date.
That's so funny.
Which is really funny.
It's that easy.
Like, they publicly announced it for, like, September. And then they were like, JK! It's July.
Another trailer-related question for you. What do you think is the ideal, like, how far out from release should you put out your first teaser?
I mean, a lot of this currently is money related.
I know that. I know
too.
that's money related, but I'm saying, like, let's pretend the money doesn't matter. What do you think? Like, if you were planning your hype cycle for a game, what would you do?
I mean, I think ideally it would be, and this is probably variable by the game,
Of course.
but I think ideally it would be when you are certain about your release date. That if something doesn't go horribly, horribly wrong, like a plague, for instance, you're like, it will release on this date. We're feeling good about it. Which obviously is not the case for many, many big budget video games.
See,
these days.
on one hand, I agree with that. Like, that would sort of be my impulse as well. On the other hand, given that it, now takes, let's say, 3 years at a minimum to develop, like, a big game in a series, right? It would be kind of a bummer, and, like, 3 years at a minimum, right? Like, it's one thing to be like, the game came out in 2020, and I don't hear until 2022 about the sequel that's coming in 2023, right? Like, that's probably okay. That's an okay cycle. But if it's more like some of these games where it's like, the game came out in 2017, and the sequel is going to come out in 2024, sort of situation. That's an exaggeration, but still. Even if it extends to 5 years instead of 3, not hearing about it at all until year 4 is kind of rough.
I mean, yeah, but also you end up with situations like Square Enix's, where they were struggling during that one, like during the last generation, they were just struggling to get games out for a variety of reasons.
And now they have,
so they had
10
a bunch
games
of
coming out every week.
Yeah, now they have 10 games coming out in a month. But like then they had like huge stuff just like hanging there from their initial release trailer, like announcement trailers. Because they announced them too early and then ran into a lot of development problems.
Shame Kingdom Hearts 4 leaked and they had to throw something together, huh?
Yeah.
It was striking watching that and watching the Kingdom Hearts 3 reveal trailer, and they're like the same. They're not the same, but the vibes of them are exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's like, man, team, you should have given us a different vibe here, because now I'm like, this game is never going to come out.
I think it will be a faster...
I know it will. I know. I'm sorry. I'm not roasting. I was just
3.
like, it's funny how these feel exactly the same. And I'm here being like, yeah, like, obviously this trailer had to get rushed out.
I think obviously all the stuff in that trailer is fake. Yeah. But...
That's fine. It's allowed to be fake.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's not fake. As we all know, first thing that gets finished in a game is the graphics.
Well, those look done.
Yeah.
for this faked part of the game.
What if they're like just kidding?
That's another thing that differentiates game and movie trailers is a lot movies don't really have to build stuff for their trailer.
Yeah.
Versus a lot of times for a game, you have to build something that isn't in the game, or initially isn't planned to be in the game, at least. Even if that's like you posted a Borderlands trailer, or you picked one out from like the list of best ones. The one with No Rest for the Wicked as the song, which has become part of that series' DNA at this point. But even like that, like it technically shows a lot of gameplay, but they've built cameras so that it's in the third person perspective. Yeah. So they've added stuff that actually isn't in the game since it's a first person game, but they want you to get a look at their characters doing cool stuff, you know, versus just showing the first person mode. But if they weren't making a trailer, they wouldn't have to do that. So it's extra work for the developers in order to make these trailers, even if it's just simple stuff like that.
Well, presumably also from like a pacing perspective for any kind of cinematic in a trailer, right? Like maybe you have something in your game that's going to be a good, like, here's an introduction to the story in 30 seconds kind of situation. And I don't even mean just like splicing things together, right? But a lot of the time I think just because of the story of games is paced like quite a bit differently than a movie, right? In a movie, you probably do have like 2 minutes of the movie that's like, this is a pretty good example of what this is going to be about. And in a game, if you pick out 2 minutes, it's like, here's this NPC teaching me how to open my item box.
Yeah,
yeah. So it's difficult. Especially given, like, with movie trailers, too. I mean, especially now, right, where I don't know, I just feel like the life cycle of a movie's time in the sun has changed a lot. But there's like, I mean, as you wrote about in one of these articles, like there's like an expected kind of array of trailers that games are supposed to produce, right? We gotta have the teaser, and then we gotta move to that, from that to like, I don't know, like the narrative intro, and then we gotta have a gameplay trailer, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot if you just want to make a game.
Yeah.
And throughout that whole thing, everyone's going to think you're a liar. So,
yeah.
It's just difficult.
Yeah. So, yeah, even though trailers are inherited from film, generally you can think of a film trailer as more representational of the product than you can of a game trailer. All these academic articles talk about how basically you can think of game trailers as a form of transmedia also, because they've taken a non-linear experience and compressed it into like a linear representation. So it's already losing something in that move between types of media, essentially. Whereas film to trailer, that is the same medium, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some issues now of like stuff like Marvel. You could argue that sometimes their trailers aren't fully representational anymore, simply because of the way they treat their visual effects and their people who do visual effects for them, because those are probably not finalized when the trailer comes out. So you can sort of see that creep from gaming culture into movies a little bit.
I will say there are some. I'm looking at a BuzzFeed article right now that's about how many are in this? 14 times Hollywood made trailers so misleading, audiences actually got pissed.
There you go.
So there's a little bit of it in Hollywood too. Occasionally having sort of like intentionally misleading trailers. I like the trailer for Sweeney Todd that has not a moment of singing.
That's very funny.
Not a one. But there are a few examples in here of like trailers where there were some effects that were added. Like I'm looking at one that's like an action movie where he's got like 20 targets on him, and in the actual movie he has like one. Or there's one where it's like marketed as a like movie called Red Eye, where they like edited the actor's eyes to glow red in one scene, even though it's not like he's like a terrorist. Like, it's not like a demon movie. Anyway, I thought it was interesting that like there's a couple of examples in film where this happens, but they're so notable that there has to be a BuzzFeed listicle about it, not just like a general culture of like something has to be created from scratch.
Yeah. But at the same time, because of sort of the hype cycle toxicity that we've mentioned a little bit, there is sort of like this culture of like analyzing trailers, especially for like big or things with like cult followings. Like, I know people really like Kingdom Hearts do this, obviously, of like be like, oh, I can see through, you know, the marketing veneer to the true game underneath.
Right. The Star Wars
in
foot.
some, if I just like go frame by frame through this whole trailer, and there's like a big like sort of culture around that is from like YouTube, for instance, really sort of encourages stuff like this as well. Yeah, and yet and I think that idea then leads to disappointed expectations in the real game, because people have spent so much time thinking about it before release, you know?
Yeah. The downside of hype.
Yeah. Well, all of fandom is toxic, really, so.
Ew.
In a certain way. I'm not saying it's not necessarily all bad, but as soon as you get too big, there is issues there.
Well, shall we talk about some trailers in a little more detail?
Sure.
I do want to talk about, first of all, just the like PS3, Xbox 360 generation of trailers in general, because it was shocking to me.
Games had a tone then in that generation.
Like, it's unbelievable. Just like over and over and over and over again. It's like, this is the same trailer. Which is just like, take the game, or not even necessarily the game itself, like a cinematic from the game, or in the case of Halo, like a diorama of the game, right? Set it to initially Mad World by Tears for Fears, but from there, any sort of sad semi-orchestral piano tune, and suggest your game has depth.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable how many of these, like, Gears of War, Halo type games, these games where it's like, you go in and you are just a super killer, right? Like, you are the apex predator in those games, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, the horrors of war, to this, like, sad tune. Did you watch the live action Halo trailer? It was like a guy...
My impression is that John Halo is a little bit sad, though.
Yeah. John Halo...
I know, that's not his name.
I know.
Master Chief, right?
John Halo. And I don't think it is Master Chief, right? We're not supposed to have seen Master Chief's face? I don't know enough about the lore of Halo.
I just mean, in terms of the games themselves, I feel like Master Chief is supposed to be a little bit sad.
Okay, fair enough. You're right. But John Halo in the live action trailer, where he goes through Master Chief basic training... it does not seem to be having a good time, to be honest. And look, again, I get it. Like, Master Chief maybe feels a little bit of sadness about being a super soldier, but these games just suggest that they are about, like, grappling with the horrors of war and the PTSD it leaves you with. And it's like, that's not what these games are.
I mean, that whole generation of games was all a little bit gritty, you know?
Yeah.
That was the gritty generation of games.
Anyway, if you were going to make an iconic trailer from, like, 2008 to, like, 2014, all you had to do was slow down your gameplay a little bit, put a sad song behind it, and, like, instant classic. Instant classic.
Instant classic.
Perhaps the most instant classic of those instant classics is the trailer for Dead Island.
Yeah.
Which I can't believe has its own Wikipedia page.
It was very notable.
I just thought when I clicked on this Wikipedia page, it was going to be like, and there were riots in the streets or something like that.
No. Yeah, so the video game Dead Island released a trailer in 2011, right? That was like a little short story about like a family being destroyed by the zombie infection. So it's like sort of cut non-linearly in between, like going back from the time the daughter dies to like the very beginning of the story where she's like running from zombies, trying to get back to her parents. And it's sort of cut in between those twos until they finally come together into the chronology. The chronology meets sort of in the end. And people loved this trailer. The game company, who are they again? What's the name?
I'm looking it back up because it didn't. Techland.
Techland
Deep Silver,
was
the publisher.
Yeah, they were expecting 100,000 views on this trailer, and it got more than 1 million
in like a day.
Yeah,
and that was like, it's probably a big whoa moment for these people. Because so this was a game. Dead Island was already like, it was like a game that like everyone thought was dead. Which is funny because it's called Dead Island, right? But it had been announced.
The first one?
What?
The first one?
Yeah, it had been announced several years before, and then like reemerged with this trailer, basically.
Okay. Because I know the second one is coming out soon.
Yeah, theoretically.
Despite being announced like, a decade ago.
Yeah. But the problem here with this trailer, well, what was striking to me in reading about the reaction to it is, everyone was like, it seems like the game's going to be about this family. Like, if the game is like this, it's going to be great. There was just a lot less... I don't feel like anyone would watch a trailer that looked like this in 2022 and be like, this is going to be the game. Like, I feel like we've grown in our cynicism. At least a little bit.
I guess. I think they were just ready for The Last of Us to invent narrative.
You stole that right from my notes. But you're absolutely right. It's unfortunate that this particular story about a family being torn apart by zombies could not be told until several years later with The Last of Us. Do you think the team at Naughty Dog watched this trailer and they were like, there's no way they're going to make that game, so we should make it?
I think they were already working on The Last of Us.
No, they weren't.
Okay. They weren't. You're right. The Last of Us only took like a year and a half to make.
You're right.
Obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think it's fair though to like release a trailer like that and like expect that that's the sort of emotion that the game is going for.
Absolutely.
Which is not super true.
Yeah, I mentioned this. I watched a few of these trailers to Clickbait Boyfriend because he had seen some of them, right? He watched that Borderlands trailer and he was like, yeah, I remember this. I saw this trailer and I was like, Mom, we have to go to GameStop.
That's so funny to me.
I know. I feel like he was much more influenced by advertising than I was. Because he has a small brain. Every time he listens to a podcast, he's like, I listened to a podcast and you and Emma made fun of me. So I have to do it every episode. Anyway. I totally lost the thread of where I was going because I was being mean.
You're watching them with Clickbait Boyfriend.
Right. Oh, and he was like, I haven't seen this trailer, but like I've watched a little bit of a Let's Play of Dead Island, and it's like kind of like funny in that like the incongruity of like zombies in bikinis, right? I don't know if that's necessarily the intended tone of the game or if that's just CBB, but it's apparent to me that like there's no way that this game captured the pathos of this girl turning into a zombie and her whole family dying.
I mean, you can see the absolute juxtaposition of that trailer versus like the iconic Dead Island 2 trailer. which is so much more lighthearted.
Yeah.
Still having a lot of cinematic, like, stuff going on, but in more service of comedy and, like, extreme violence and sort of in a lighthearted manner.
It was striking to me how many people were like, a dead child in a preview, like, poor taste.
Yeah.
I don't know, this just didn't, like, it was a little gory, but not, like it's a zombie game. I don't know. I would never have watched this and been like, I don't know. I mean, in hindsight, it's a little gross that, like, this family is not really part of the game. It's just a marketing tactic. So in that sense, it's a little bit like, But also, and I'll, this is referencing something someone wrote in, like, a Guardian article about this. But, like, zombie movies have always been about the pathos of, like, it's someone who was a person and now they're a zombie. Right? Like, that's always been, if there's emotional heft in a zombie piece of media, it's that. Right? Mm-hmm. And so I just thought it was a little weird that everyone was like, unbelievable that they would show this girl turning into a zombie and dying.
I mean, that's sort of been, like, the video games. That's the whole evolution of them,
Yeah. Did you watch the Goat Simulator parody of it that I put in the notes?
I mean, I saw it when it was at Jeff's not E3.
What did you see?
I saw the trailer when it played at Jeff's not E3 show.
The Goat Simulator one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Goat Simulator 3.
Oh, this is Goat Simulator 1, I think.
Oh, did they do one for that too?
Is the Goat Simulator 3 one also a Dead Island?
It's the Dead Island 2 trailer.
Oh, Goat Simulator 1 is the Dead Island 1 trailer.
Oh.
It's really funny. It's just like, it's the goat.
I like that they've stuck with this as their theme, I guess.
It's hilarious. It's the goat laying on the grass. And it's like totally, this is one place where it, like, being built, like, seemingly in the engine is really funny because it's like the goat just, like, levitates back up through the window and in the end he blows up a gas station. You need to watch this. Afterward. Okay. It's so funny. But there's just no way, like, the Dead Island trailer would not play today. You just can't do this, like, it's a maudlin tune underneath, like, totally slow-mo, depressing action anymore. I think people would just laugh at you. We like different vibes now.
I guess. I don't know. I think there's still a lot of that.
I think you'd have to be more thoughtful about your music choice. How about that? Okay. I think some of the music that's, like, in this and in, like, some of the, like, PS3 era ones are just, like, a little too, like, in the Gears of War one where Mad World is playing and he says, worn out places, worn out faces, and he turns this, like, chipped sculpture of a face on worn out faces on the ground. That would have been
see, I love that. I want more of that.
Like, on one hand, I do want more of that. On the other hand, just, like, imagine the YouTube chat in, like, a state of play as that happened. They'd be like, garbage, where's Bayonetta?
They say that no matter what is on screen. So at the end of the day, there is just someone in every live event chat that is just saying Bayonetta.
Was it you who was talking to me about watching it and it was like, it's mommy and then it's mommy again? Or was it Clickbait Boyfriend?
It must have been Clickbait Boyfriend. I don't remember this.
He was watching, like, maybe it was, like, where did they reveal Bayonetta? Oh, it was in Nintendo Direct. So he, like, had switched his computer and he was watching it and he was like, it's just the chat. It was that and they were just like, mommy. And then it was Resident Evil and it was just like, mommy.
Exactly. You can't do anything about the YouTube live chat. I just
maybe that's another thing for your trailers. You've got to have something that's going to make the chat go mommy in your trailer.
Oh man, that's just good design,
Yeah.
That's just good game design.
Anyway. There was some good PS3. I really liked the MLB The Show Cubs World Series ad. Blatantly emotionally manipulative, but, like, really good. And, like, because, like, what else are you gonna do, right? Like, what do you have to show off as MLB The Show, right? Like, it's a baseball game. We all know what baseball looks like. So I was like, this is a clever ad. Specifically for Chicago and Chicago alone.
Yeah.
In this ad, the Chicago Cubs in 2012 win the World Series, and Chicago goes nuts. And it turns out it's just a guy playing MLB The Show, crying on his couch.
Good.
Very touching. But that just gets up. I want more weird trailers. Give me something weird.
I do think, like, I watched, like, the live-action Crusader Kings 2 trailer. I do think we should replace, like, CGI logo reveals with, like, live-action skits or dances.
Absolutely.
If you don't have anything to show, I think you should, like, hire some dancers to be like, Elder Scrolls 6. Or whatever.
See, this is what I'm talking about. Every trailer needs a meme moment, and that's much easier if you get some corny live action going on.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I watched those Zelda ones, which are so funny, and
they're so funny. I love that one where they're just dancing.
I wish I could understand more of what they were saying.
Super Famicom.
I got that part. They say psycho at some point. I'm like, yeah, it is great. But I'd like, well, on one hand, I do think that maybe not anymore, but at a certain point in history, I do feel like Japanese advertising was just more like that. Just in general.
That's fair.
But I'd like more of that energy. This is why, circling back to my crusade against gameplay, I just want more weird stuff in the trailers.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'd like...
You just want all Super Bowl commercials is what you want.
Like, essentially, yes. I'm, like, over Super Bowl commercials, but I care enough about games that I would go for that more. Yeah.
So, one other notable thing about trailers that you'll see a lot now, that's often attributed to Killzone 2's 2005 E3 trailer.
What a disaster this whole situation is.
You'll often see now, like, little, like, tiny disclaimers at the bottom of trailers that's either, like, not actual gameplay footage or represents a game in development and is subject to change or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Right? Like, either one of those two things. And apparently, like, the ubiquity of that is, like, Killzone 2's trailer was made essentially by, like, a separate CGI company. Like, they just Guerrilla Games just contracted it out to someone to make, like, a trailer for it. That was simply just, like, it was not from the game at all.
And looked much, much better than the game. Is what's important.
Well, yes, because it was done by an animation studio.
Right.
Essentially.
And that ended up being a bad situation.
Yes.
Because then that was what everyone was expecting, and they were like, uh-oh, guess we have to do that.
Yep.
Which I have to imagine was rough.
Yes. I mean, like... It does feel like now you, like, look at that, it was being made for the PS2.
Yeah.
And you're like, are you sure it really looks like this? Not that the PS2, like, there's some good-looking games on the PS2. But even then, like, not that good-looking.
I did love, reading through this list of, like, best PS3 ones. Just, like, the striking difference between, like... The Grand Theft Auto ones, like, are good trailers, but are, like, obviously made in the engine. Mm-hmm. And, like, don't need to have been, right? Frankly, I think those trailers might have been even more successful had they made them a little more beautiful. But it's okay. I feel this way more about the GTA 5 one than the GTA 4 one.
Well, I mean, GTA 5's supposed to, like, you're supposed to be stupid in that.
That's true.
And doofy and destructive anyway.
That's fair.
Right?
That's fair.
So... I don't know if those are really about the beauty.
Fair enough. I just, like, watched it. I was like, why did you do this in it? Well, whatever. Anyway, I won't say stupid things. some of them looked clearly like they were made in the game, and then there's like Mass Effect 3, which looks like literally it's a movie.
Yeah.
So, or like The Last of Us. I realize that that the spacing in time of these games is significant as well, but it's interesting to me. I
guess the cutscenes in The Last of Us are not in engine, yeah. But it was really interesting to watch The Last of Us 1. And 1, there's a couple scenes that's not in the finished game. Mm-hmm. And 2, you can see, like, the gameplay sections where they're having, like, they're controlling Joel walking really slowly, like, with a fixed camera.
Yeah.
Which is just so funny. It's so funny having played those sections, you know?
Yeah. You're gonna look at it this exact way.
Yeah.
But it is sort of... It will be interesting to me how games continue to develop as what gameplay looks like and what cinematics look like get closer and closer together.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, it was really striking looking at PS3 stuff of like, whoa, pretty clear when you're making a movie trailer and when you're making here's some of the game thing.
Yeah.
Because it was just, like, unbelievably different. And I think as time goes on, you know, those things will look more and more and more the same. I mean, they already kind of do.
Yeah. I guess one last thing that I think is really interesting. First of all, there's like the first video game trailer, what's thought of as the first video game trailer is it was like 83 for Zaxxon.
That was a funny
which was
trailer.
Like a Sega arcade game. It felt very 80s.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really interesting. One of the academic papers was talking about how, like, that would have been called a commercial then. And the term trailer, the earliest they could find it applied to a video game, was in Mortal Kombat's console version promotional materials in 1993. And I thought that was really interesting in terms of, like, how they were framing sort of Mortal Kombat, and especially with, like, the Senate hearings around it. It's like, trailer sounds like it's made for something artistic, right?
Yeah.
Versus you have a toy commercial. I thought that's an interesting language switch in terms of how we talk about those promotional things for games. Like, even you were saying, like, just make commercials, you know? It's interesting. I just think that shift in language makes a lot of sense in terms of games history.
It definitely does. In terms of marketing trailers, calling them trailers is definitely a good move.
Yeah. I mean, it's also just like you can see the thinking there. Yeah. You know, games weren't officially protected under the First Amendment until 2011, but they wanted them to be, obviously. Right. And so you have to think about how you're talking about them. Because toys... I don't believe toys are protected under the First Amendment.
Only like Woody and Buzz.
Because they can speak and are sentient.
Their speech is probably protected.
Yeah. It's just in terms of framing something as art that has trailers versus a toy that has commercials.
It's so interesting to me, though. I mean, neither things that have trailers nor things that have commercials. I mean, you listed a couple of other sort of examples, but, like, there's no other industry that's, like, I don't know, like, maybe a fashion show is sort of like this. Maybe?
I think that probably comes the closest. I think every other industry has events that are very company-focused.
Sure.
Like, a company has, like, an event where you can see what the company is doing.
Like upfronts and TV, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, Marvel has, like, just had, like, a presentation last month or something where they went through, like, all their upcoming movies.
Right.
And anime has stuff like Jump Festa is Shonen Jump's big event where they announce all the anime that's going to be made of their magazine's stories. But but there aren't really, like, E3s in the same way as games have. Well, had.
Well,
E3s.
have. Isn't E3 coming back? Have.
Is it, though?
I don't know. Man, I watched that
Not in the same way. They're working with ReedPop that does PAX.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm really curious if it's going to reframe itself into something more PAX size.
On a related note, you know what more game trailers should have? The,
What?
like, lead developer appearing at the end in cosplay of the character in the game.
Yeah. That's
That
true.
Twilight Princess, like, janky film from E3 where everybody freaks out as Miyamoto appears at the end, like, dressed as Link. That should be a required thing.
I think so, yeah.
But yeah, that was interesting to me to kind of realize. I was like, it's like, I don't know, it's like the Tonys are sort of this for Broadway, but like that's after it's all out there. Like,
Yeah. Awards are even the game awards are more of a marketing thing than like even like the Oscars.
Well, they're more upfront about the fact that they're a marketing thing.
Yeah. Yes, the games do not attempt to pretend that they have any prestige.
Yeah.
They're like, you're here for the hype, baby. You don't care who wins these things.
I can't believe we've done this whole podcast without talking about the Breath of the Wild. Here's my other thing that your trailer needs to be good. It needs to have that one
Cliff.
shot from Breath of the Wild.
Needs Cliff.
Needs Cliff. Needs Cliff. Alright, here's my final tirade against gaming in trailers.
Okay.
Did you watch the Nintendo Direct, listeners? Did you see the trailer for It Takes Two? Sometimes it's better not to include gameplay footage. That's my...
To be fair, everything, I mean, it just looks so downgraded for the Switch.
Yeah.
Which, like, of course it is, right?
Right.
But it does... You know, at least it wasn't dropping frames. It was just, like, really low resolution.
Yeah. I'm just saying...
Probably so that it wouldn't drop
That
frames.
game is already out. It has won Game of the Year. Like, you just didn't need to do that to yourself.
Hey, you know, they're being representational. They didn't show footage from another device. They clearly showed Switch footage.
Made me... That's my final argument for sometimes gameplay footage, maybe you shouldn't.
At the same time, does that hurt them? You know, the people who want it on Switch are just like, oh, it's on Switch.
Right.
And everyone else can be like, oh, I already played that on PS4.
I know. But why scare them with the graphics of the PS2 era? I'm just kidding. It wasn't that bad. But...
It was just low resolution.
Yeah,
it wasn't
yeah.
they changed the models or anything.
It's my final complaint. Mom, any closing thoughts on trailers? All trailers should feature Tinkerbell, Sephiroth, and Utada.
There's no correct number of trailers. You will either not show enough, and people will complain about it, or you'll show too many trailers, and people will complain about it. Sorry.
There's no right amount of story to show. There's no right amount of gameplay to show. People will hate it no matter what you do.
Yeah. Have fun.
Hire some good live action actors. And a musician.
Do some dances. Honestly, nothing to lose. Just choreograph a dance.
Do you think that's what's next? Like, game trailers are just like, you're gonna learn how to do the Halo, and it's a TikTok dance.
If they put out a trailer that was just like Master Chief, like, okay, Cortana, it's time to learn how to do the Halo. And they just do a dance, I would buy that Halo game.
Right? I just want more of that energy. I just want the games to not take themselves quite so seriously. Like, you're not going for the Oscar, people. It's a toy. That's why I want more commercials.
I think that God of War could do like a photo mode trailer where they're like dad and son on good road trip. That's what I tried to do during my God of War playthrough.
But see, there could be a TikTok God of War thing. Like, I'm thinking of, I don't know if Hulu has fed you the advertisement over and over of the, like, girl who's, like, filming an Instagram reel and, like, her mom's in the background. It's for, like, Instagram's parental controls.
Well, at the same time, PlayStation does make those animated, like, GIFs of their characters doing memes, and people hate those.
But, like, do they really, or do they love to hate them, you know?
They hate them.
They love to hate them. I'm just saying, if they had made a trailer that was, like, Atreus being like, I'm gonna teach you, like...
A little bit plays, like, it was very popular to hate on those things when people were talking about Naughty Dog and Crunch, for instance. Sure. Which I think just a little bit misunderstands how that works. They probably had them working on that when they were waiting for someone else to be done with something so that they could work on the game.
I would just like Atreus to teach him to do, like, the Athena. Or do the I don't know, Hades.
Alright, let's close it up.
Well, folks, do you have a favorite trailer that you've ever watched, or a least favorite trailer, or a trailer you felt like misled you, or a trailer where the vibes were immaculate? Or do you just have any other thoughts? Do you too think there should be no gameplay ever in trailers? That's not what I think. It came down too hard on the hot take. I just want no one to be angry. If you have thoughts on any of those things or anything else, unless you're angry, in which case, go be angry somewhere else, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read more about the show, check out the games that are in the hat for our main episodes, and read our blog featuring long-running series Click with Boyfriend, and Split Screen. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you should subscribe. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, anywhere you can find podcasts. Wherever you found the podcast today, you can find Talk This. So don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode on Sundays at noon.
There actually is a split screen on the blog this week.
Wow, yeah, I saw that one up. Get hype.
Get hype.
Just in time for the new season, right?
Yeah. Next week, I am 85% sure we're talking about Journey and Citizen Sleeper.
Yes, absolutely. Those are the two games. Okay. Those names sound familiar to me.
All right.
So come prepared for when I'm ready to talk about Journey and The Last of Us 1, because we talked about The Last of Us this week.
I'll be ready.
Me texting Emma before, it's The Last of Us Part 1, right?
No!
Alright, listeners, that's it for this week's show. Emma, do you wanna sign off?
This week, I hope that your world has just enough slow-mo.